Coach Conrad Singh, our CEO of tennis. We have Danny, our FTA lead coach. We have Coach Cinto, our director of coaching and JDP. We have Coach Todd Anderson, right over here, our red ball lead coach. And of course, we have Tim Clifford, our director of strength and conditioning. My name is Ari Zuckerman, VP of the Centercourt Tennis Academy. Today is a very important topic, and we're glad that everybody's on the call. You can submit questions. We'll answer them at the end. Our topic today is maintaining progress through an annual program with a balanced multi-sport schedule. Really focusing on year-round training, recovery, rest, when to train, how much to train, just all sorts of topics that we're going to discuss with our team. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Coach Conrad. He's going to speak a little bit, and then we'll get on with it.
Thank you, Ari. Look, I think this is a critical topic, and I do have a lot of meetings with parents every week by phone calls, by in person, who are asking me similar questions. And that is, one of the first ones is, I'm worried if my child plays too much, they're going to burn out. I want to talk about that a little. We're concerned about not playing other sports. Should we be playing other sports? We'll talk a lot about that today. And also the other one is plateaus or peaks in level. Very concerned my child is not improving. Why is that, or how can we avoid that topic? So they're kind of the main things that I want to address today. We're very fortunate to have a team of world-class, world-leading experts in their areas here. So thank you, everyone, for making the time. Let's open right away with, I think, the critical topic of being a multi-sports young athlete and pursuing 2, even 3 sports, some being team, combined with individual. Why is it important? What do we think as a group? What is your opinion? And where do you stand? And I'll start with myself, if that's all right. Look, I come from a country, Australia, where we're renowned as producing world-class sports champions over and over. In fact, before the Sydney Olympics, we had 56 different world number ones across the board in 56 different sports. From a country of 20 million people at that time, that was pretty phenomenal. And the one reason for that is that nobody specializes until 14 or 15 years old, which means everyone is encouraged to have a main sport, which could be either individual or team, a secondary sport, again, individual or team, and often a third sport, which is a hobby. So a normal thing for us, which I still encourage today with my own children and kids that I'm mentoring, is tennis could be your prime sport, and you might be spending 12, 10, 15 hours a week doing that. Your secondary sport might be something that assists your tennis. So whether it be a basketball or a soccer, something that's going to help with movement, agility, speed, endurance, etc. And then your third sport might be something that's purely static but has swing orientation, like golf. So you can see that all 3 of those, if you look at them from a holistic viewpoint, they're going to help. They're going to help you to be an overall better tennis player. I'm a huge believer that not specializing too early is the way. I mentioned the topic earlier of burnout. I do not believe that burnout is a reality. I believe that burnout is something that exists when the pressure overcomes the performance, meaning the player is thinking too much about, I have to win, or this, that, the other. The outcomes start to come into play, and or boredom kicks in. For me, burnout is not a physical. Kid is simply physically burned out, unless it's been a really heavy phase, lots of tournaments, lots of matches, and no time off. That can happen. I think that's more physical fatigue than burnout. So for me, burnout is not really a topic if you're well managed and if you're playing multiple sports. I'd like to, if I can, Ari, throw directly over to Coach Cinto, who is our junior development leader, and ask what his opinions are on multiple sports versus singular sports.
Yeah, thanks, Conrad. Actually, I wanted to give some examples of very successful athletes that in their early teens, they've been actually combining different sports, and that at some point they had to specialize, but on the early stages of their career, they were actually doing different sports. And for example, in tennis, we have Rafa Nadal, who was a kid that he was combining tennis and soccer until he was 12 at a competitive level. He never dropped out in seasons. He was doing continuous learning in both sports, just combining days. Roger Federer, it's another case. He was also doing soccer until early teens, and he was also doing badminton, a sport that it is very similar to tennis. It's a racket sport, and sometimes I think some parents have the misconception that doing two sports, like if I choose badminton and tennis, for example, it's gonna affect the strokes in my tennis, which it's something that we have to defend here. It's not the case. You are adding different skills. You are learning different skills. And it's like trying to learn, it's like bilingualism. This is something that an analogy I wanted to bring on. Like, we don't have a problem. And actually, we all think that bilingualism is something that we should encourage as a kid. Like, if you are from early ages, you learning two languages from your dad and your mom in the international couples, it is something like really desirable. Why sometimes we have the conception that in sports it's gonna affect us and it's gonna decrease the performance in one sport. It's not the case. It's a different skill. We can learn both at the same time. We strongly encourage that. And as you said, there's some skills that translate from one sport to another. For example, if you play soccer, you develop footwork skills. You develop spatial awareness that is really directly it can translate really well into tennis. If you play basketball, you develop acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. That is also very useful for tennis. If you do gymnastics, you develop a body control, balance, and posture that it also really connects with tennis. I want everybody to understand that we really encourage multi-sport participation, and that multi-sport participation that we encourage, that does not mean that we have to drop off sports season by season. This is a different topic. Multi-sports participation, yes. You make your kid physically active every day of the week. If you have any aspiration of having your kid develop high level of athletic skills, if you are looking for your kid to master his athletic skill development, he needs to be active every day of the week with multi-sport skills, but do it in a continuous way. Do it in a way that you are building small bricks continuously, and not separating. Oh, this season I do this season I do that. These big drop-offs are actually they take away from developing faster. If you have to rebuild yourself every season, you have to relearn some skills that actually deteriorate when you drop off. For example, tennis, there are skills like timing, like a rhythm, like the specific special awareness of tennis, with a big drop of time, actually deteriorates, and you have to rebuild when you come after a few months. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you combine the sports, but there is a continuous learning, and you can preserve that day by day, slowly, but continuously, these skills.
Yeah, Cinto, can you speak to also like the especially from a tennis under standpoint? I know that's what a lot of your expertise. Repetition, the importance of repetition in tennis. Not taking breaks on your technical skills, because obviously if you take time off, that type of thing. Repetition.
Yeah. So regarding these young ages, There is a window of that we call it the golden window of development, of athletic development, that is from 6 to 12 years old. These ages are crucial. They are the ages where neurologically the kids are. It's the ideal moment for mastering these complex and specific movement patterns, and it happened between 6 and 12 years old. Now, in this age, if you want to develop the maximum potential in any sport, we need to have continuous learning in this sport. Just think about if you drop off 3 months a year, 3 months a year between 6 and 12, that would be like at the end, if between 6 and 12, you've dropped off for 24 months. That is 2 years of development that you've lost in that sport, in that golden window of opportunity and of coordination development. It is 2 years of lost time. It is huge if you want to master the skill on that sport. We cannot allow that to happen. We need to keep that crucial years a continuous development, because the flexibility that our brain has on those stages do not come back, and we have to use that window. So from 6 to 12, it's the time that we have to develop all these skills. So combined sports, everyday physically active, use different sports to develop different skill sets, but do not drop off, because those years do not come back.
I'm going to jump in there, Cinto. That's golden information. The golden window is that prepubertic time where growth plates start to seal and it gets a little bit harder for kids to make changes. The next window is 12 to 15. And so in that window is high rep time. Ari, you mentioned reps before. So if the foundation of technical proficiency is not in place by 12, and we're still trying to do a lot of teaching, learning, changing stances, grips, weight transferences, things that are critical to tennis in the pubic period. Once we've passed that window, it's a lot harder for kids to make changes. There's also another factor that's in play, massive factor, and that is growth spurts. From 12 to 15, 12 to 16, 12 to 17, you're going to see growth spurts. What happens at those times to kids? They feel uncoordinated, they feel heavy, they feel sluggish, they feel horrible. There are days they just cannot get it right. And so by reducing periods or days volume of training during those times, you are dramatically hurting the confidence of the athlete. And what happens, you mentioned also earlier, Cinto, the detraining effect. No one ever talks about that. Tennis has one of the fastest detraining effects of any sport, proven by science. So you can ask any player today, we'll ask Coach Danny next, any full-time player that doesn't pick up a racket for 5 days, 4 days, comes back and there is a noticeable difference in level. You can see it. You know, my own children compete at a high level for their age. If I give them a week off, I guarantee the first 2-3 days are very average. So if we're playing constantly with stop, restart, start, restart, compete, not compete, it gets very hard for the body to follow a constant flow, and confidence starts to get affected. We know that, now I'm talking a little bit about psychology, winning is a habit. Kids get used to winning. So if it gets to like 4-all, you can bet your life on it. The kid that didn't stop playing for 2 months or 3 months, he's going to win because he believes in it. So there are a lot of reasons why stopping even for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, let's say to play a spring sport like baseball, you might reduce your load back and do 2 days or 3 days of baseball, go from 3 days tennis to 1 day tennis. That's better than doing no tennis for 2 months and then coming back and expecting to have the same level. Now we're introducing the topic of plateau. A lot of parents talk about my kid's not improving. You mentioned something really important, Cinto, and that is 7 days of activity. There is no athlete, so you can talk to Novak, Rafa, Roger, Serena, Venus, any legendary athlete, they will tell you that they were doing sports 7 days a week. That may not mean tennis 7 days a week, but definitely 5 days a week. You're going to that level. The other 2 days were riding the bike, running with a dog, throwing a frisbee, doing activity that was engaging, and or playing a team sport, playing basketball, playing. So very, very good info. And I just hope that I clarified a little bit further with some science. Danny, I'd like to throw to you and talk now a little bit about that 12 to 15 and then 15 to college window. And what do you see as a sort of a crucial plan, weekly schedule, let's call it monthly schedule, for those players as they fall maybe into other seasons?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what you guys have said already, definitely in support of cross training and multi-sport training from a younger age. I wouldn't say that it's super necessary to specialize even up to 12, 13. I think that it would just be important as far as tennis is concerned to keep tennis as part of your identity, as the player's identity. So it doesn't have to be the only sport that they're playing, but like Cinto said, there's plenty of examples of competitive players that have done multiple sports. I think sports like basketball, even baseball, things that really train the kinetic chain that's so necessary in tennis are very important and a little bit, I think, overlooked. I think we usually look at soccer and look at running based sports, but I think the limitation with soccer is that it's only using your feet. I think it's very important to have activities that incorporate your whole body. As it pertains to players that are looking to specialize, I think the established amount of time to play per week, I would say generally 5 to 6 times a week. I think it's very important to value rest. It's like what you said before, Conrad, about burnout. I think burnout comes when there's like psychological stress. I think a way to mitigate that stress is by incorporating consistent rest patterns, either a day a week where they just don't do much related to tennis specifically. But fairly intense training is required because it's, like I said, tennis is very different than a lot of other sports because it's so highly technical and a very skill specific sport. If like you said, with the full-time players, if they don't train for 2-3 days, if they rest a little bit too long after a tournament, they come back, quote unquote, rusty. What does rusty mean? Their timing is off. Their spatial awareness, believe it or not, can be a little bit off. The body doesn't feel quite the same. And so you're playing a little bit of catch up there, losing time in skill acquisition and building on what they're supposed to be building on. I think another very, very important area to consider is how often these players compete. I think that consistent competition is very, very important. I generally recommend at least 2 tournaments, 2 weekends of tournaments a week, 2 weekends of tournaments a month. It's very important to incorporate those training blocks, and also, like I said before, to mitigate the psychological stress that comes with competing regularly. Those things can be really important in sort of managing this burnout thing that everybody is very wary of. I think, just to echo what you said before, burnout is caused by pressure and not volume. I think volume, as long as it's kept fun and engaging and interesting and challenging, is all very, very good, especially for these highly specialized tennis players. But where we run into problems is when they're competing every single weekend, have seemingly no time to catch up on their training or on their rest, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming to the point where we've seen many players 14, 15, 16 years say, can't do this anymore, can't keep this up. So I think it's not about the volume, it's just about the mitigating that pressure.
Thank you, Danny. That's great info. I want to jump in on a couple of your points. Tournament scheduling, guys, is the secret sauce to success. If we're overexposing, underexposing, they all have an effect. So the key is to understand the athlete, understand what developmental stage they're in. Are they in a high technical, high latency period, which means lots of changes need to happen, obviously that's a time to reduce your tournaments. Reduce the number back. The rule of thumb that I use, which is proven true for 2 decades at least, is their age is the number of tier 1 or priority 1 events you want to play, or important tournaments. Think of it like that, their age. So if it's a 12-year-old, 12 important tournaments a year would be great. Okay. If they're in the high development periods, you want to make sure you have what are called priority 2 events. They are the ones they go to play just to play, to feel the whole process of warm up and cool down and schedule and match and pressure and opponents and all these different things. They're priority 2 events. A lot of people don't think about playing priority 2 events, where it's absolutely fine to go out and not win, even not finish the tournament. Some of you that know me know I'll withdraw a player early if we got what we wanted out of the event. So it's not about every single event having to play every tournament. And if we miss one event, oh my gosh, we're falling behind. That's not the way. The other thing I would add to this is if your child is a good player, when I say that, a performance player, a 4, 5 UTR and above, you want to think about playing 2 events a year out of age group. So they're playing up, let's say if they're 12s, 14s, at least 2 times, and even 16s 1 time. That's something you want to think about. So tournament scheduling is absolutely pivotal, and I think you should seek advice if you need more help with that. Periodization of training. Players need to know what they're working on. I think that's why it's so important to have these breaks between events. And the last thing I'll talk about is what I call unpacking the experience. So once a player goes to a tournament, believe it or not, guys, it's traumatic. Like for the player, they go through a whole bunch of emotions that the coaches don't go through. The parents may go through some of it, but not through what a player goes through. So once they get back, they do need that 1-2 days just to think about things, then sit down. Let's have a conversation about what happened. This is what I saw. What did you see? Give the microphone to the children. Let them give you their feedback as much as possible. Then obviously journalizing. We talk a lot about journalizing. There's so much research behind the power of the journal and pen to paper. I'm not talking about texting, not talking about typing. Pen to paper. It commits to the short-term memory, commits to the long-term memory. It's a reference for players to go back to. So those elements I think are really important in keeping motivation, keeping reality check in place. Like this is what we're going for. Another thing that's really important, especially for those playing USTA, is to understand how your ranking is developed, right? It's only taking your best 6 tournaments. So if you play 35 tournaments, a lot of the time you're wasting time. It's not worth playing. You can't get anything out of it. So you need to know, let's say your top result is 150 points. Your top result, in order to replace your top result, you need to make 151 points. So what round of which tournament level do you need to make to go past that? And that should be the goal. It's not always, I got to win that tournament. It's just too hard to win the tournament. Things can go right or wrong. These are all things that we're also happy to sit down and help people with who may feel they're stuck. And I guess now I'm referring to that word plateau, right? Plateau. If I win an L6 and then the next week play an L5 and I make a quarterfinal, it's the same result. I don't have to win an L6 and then win an L5. That's just way too difficult. We've got to think about things in a more logical way and understand, again, the best 6 results are what counts. And we're always aiming to try to get a result that's going to go into our best 6. Doesn't have to always be our best result, especially if we're going through a technical change, grip change, footwork change, serve motion change. These are the reasons why we really need to think about periodization, tournament planning, and factor in the number of tournaments that we play. So I'm going to thank you for that, Danny. That was great. I want to throw over to Coach Tim Clifford, who's our physical guru, strength and conditioning legend. Tim, can you talk to us a little bit about the physical differences that we're going to see and what we should expect? Maybe throw in a little bit of growth spurt information at the various age groups, 12s, 14s, 16s, and even 18s.
Sure. So the way that we look at it on the physical side of things, when we're looking at multi-sport athletes, kids that are already specialize in any individual sport, whether it's tennis, whether it's baseball, whatever it's going to be. Our biggest thing is always looking at overuse. That is the biggest area of concern in youth athletics on the physical side of things at this moment. It's really changed over the past 10 to 15 years, the way that we approach working with younger kids. We're almost now purely on the fitness end of things. It's almost purely injury prevention at this point, up until we're out of puberty. So when we're talking about that 12 to 15 range, for most boys and girls, that's going to be the highest risk of overuse injuries, especially in their lower bodies. It's going to depend on the sport that they're doing. But as most of us know, when youth bodies are growing, the bones grow first, muscles get stretched, ligaments get stretched, and that's where all the Osgood-Schlatters and all the other overuse and growth related injuries are going to happen. So when we're looking at the load, particularly since I deal mainly with tennis players, a lot of these kids are going to be playing anywhere from 10 hours on the low end up to 25, 30 hours on the high end. So when we're looking at a multi-sport type athlete, what we want to focus on when I advise some of the kids that I work with or the parents that I work with of our athletes is find something that's complementary of the sport that we're doing, but that has benefits that are going to cross-train the body. So like if we're, let's say we're a high school tennis player. Now, this would never work because of the way the seasons function here in the US, but we would not want a high level high school boy playing baseball at the same time. The mechanics of throwing and the mechanics of serving, the rotations of swinging and the rotations of swinging are very overlapped. And if we have a tennis player who's in clinics, three nights a week doing a couple lessons, we're going to have a couple thousand rotations on that spine. We throw that in with rotations from playing baseball, from throwing. That just becomes so excessive to the point where we're just inviting injury. So if we have a tennis player, let's say a boy again who's playing in the spring, we might want to look at something that's going to give them like a different feel, whether it's again like something like Cinto mentioned with soccer, where it's just a lot of footwork. It's a lot of spatial awareness, knowing where the ball is, knowing where my teammates are. That's going to be very different but complementary to a tennis player, because even when you're kicking, it is still cross activation of all the same muscles that you're using during serves and during swings. So when we're looking at overuse, when we're looking at injury prevention and multi-sport athletes, we want to try to figure out a sport that is going on around the same time that's going to give us complementary things, but also give the athlete physically some variation on what they're doing so that we're not overusing a particular part of the body. And just really trying to reduce those injuries. And I think, this has come up a few times, but I'll just hit on it because the mental side of sports, as much as, some of us older people now in my 40s can say like the mental side of sports was not a big thing when I was a kid, like it was toughen up, rub some dirt on it and get back to it. But now we know that the mental side of things can manifest very much physically in what these kids are doing. So if you're playing a high pressure sport at a high level like tennis, where it's an individual sport, where all the pressure is on you, it's just you and the kid across from you, maybe looking at a sport where it's more team sided, that we can, put some of that mental load on our teammates, or even just a sport that's not as super competitive, that's like playing ping pong, like where the stakes aren't as high. That kid could have some downtime to get the mental stresses of whatever their main sport is and just kind of bring that down a notch, so they're not feeling like they're going to hit that plateau, or they're not feeling like they're mentally overwhelmed. Those would be the major points that I would say in terms of like addressing a multi-sport athlete, especially as they're growing, especially as they're developing. And then obviously as they get older and older, they need to get more and more specialized, so as girls are going to age out of puberty somewhere in that 15 to 16 range. Boys can be upwards of 21, but realistically it's around that 18, and that's when, the training on my end of things gets much, much more intense for those kids. And we would want to be specializing more in the individual sport that they want to succeed at. But it goes right through the professionals. F1's starting up again like this next week. And like, I know whenever I watch that show, these guys are always playing pickleball. They're always doing something on the side just to kind of get their mind off of things, you know? So developing a well-rounded athlete is just, it's years long. It's lifelong. And, you know, we should never have them fully invested in one particular sport, I think.
Thank you, Tim. Ari, over to you.
All right. Next, we're going to have Mr. Todd Anderson, our Red Ball director, who runs. We're mostly going to talk about 8 and under kids actually between the ages of, some of them start as early as 3. We have some 3-year-olds in our program up to 8, just about the importance of footwork patterns, you know, hand-eye coordination, timing, spatial awareness, those type of things that we continue to work on in our program. So here we go, Coach Todd. Let me spin this around here.
All right. Thank you, Ari. Yes, the Red Ball program, the ages start at 3. And it's so rewarding seeing all these kids at such a young age getting out there on the court. We're having so much fun with the kids, but also at such a young age, they are developing their motor skills and their coordination, which is so important. Yes, we're working on tennis skills, and we're working on forehands and backhands and the tennis skill set. But at such a young age, when they can develop their motor skills with their hand-eye coordination, their movement, it's super important. I mean, you just see when they start that young and they continue to grow as they get older. It's amazing how much coordinated these kids are when they start at such a young age. We have fun on the court too. You know, I mean, seeing them laugh and running around and hitting balls, it's amazing. The energy down there is great. And also, you know, we offer it 7 days a week. So, you know, with schedules, totally understand about schedules, but we offer it 7 days a week, 3 times a day. So there's plenty of opportunity for the kids to keep playing, you know, when the schedules do get busy. And you just see them, you know, if they play each session, you just see how their coordination and their skill set sticks. They continue to be able to develop their forehands and their backhands. We do work on serve as well, and it's amazing how these kids can serve at such an early age. You know, in tennis, you have to serve to be able to start the point. I mean, that's what you have to do. So to see these kids at 5, 6, 7 years old being able to serve and play points, it's absolutely amazing. It's so rewarding and so much fun. So yeah, the Red Ball program starts at 3, which can continue to develop those skill sets throughout. And then also, you know, we have summer camp that we run 12 weeks. Actually, I think it's 13 weeks this summer. And there, you know, so if you're playing once a week, you know, in the fall, winter, and spring to fit your schedule, if you come to 1 week of summer camp, the kids are playing 25 hours of tennis and coordination and drills, you know, which is amazing. We see so much development in summer camp in just 1 week with these kids because they do it every single day. It's repetition and repetition. And it's amazing how these kids can develop. I mean, some kids are coming 7 to 8 weeks out of the summer, and their development from when they start to when we're done at camp, the end of camp, it's just amazing. And we have so much fun. I mean, we're at camp from 9 to 3:30, and we're playing a lot of tennis. We're playing a lot of fun games as well that I've created over the years to keep them engaged and keep them learning and developing their skill set. But summer camp is also a great opportunity to continue their tennis as well. That's all I have, Ari. If anything else?
Yeah, no, Todd, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions if I can. That's really great information. I think something that parents should maybe understand a little better is that tennis at that young age. Let me start with this. There is no proof that early specialization and being a champion 12 and under, 13 and under makes you on path to pro or D1. I mean, they're going to be good players, but there's no guarantees. What is guaranteed, though, is from the ages of 4, 5 to 8, 9 years old, the foundations that you're putting in are going to give you a platform to excel in tennis and or any other sports. So I personally know many kids that have gone on. They were really good players, 5 to 8, maybe 9, maybe 10, and then they moved on to basketball, Australian rules football, another big sport where I come from. they've gone on to be superstars in other sports. And they will tell you that their foundations came from playing tennis. How often, Todd, have you been able to see kids come in that show great skill, that have gone on to be really good at other sports at college level or even at high school level?
Oh, Conrad, that's a great point. I totally agree. I mean, the foundation that we're building, starting at 4, 5, 6, it sticks with them throughout their progress. So I walk around the club and I see all these kids that are in Green Ball Edge and FTA, full-time academy, and they all started their foundation in the Red Ball program at such a young age, and it's amazing how their technique and their skill set, it just starts at such a young age, and that's where they really get it. And yeah, I mean, it starts with tennis, and then I see some kids on the basketball courts. When I'm at tournaments, for my son, I see kids that were in the tennis program also playing basketball, and it's just a great fit. You see they're moving on the court, and it's really great.
Coach Cinto, can I ask you one more question regarding sort of motor skill development, coordination, and those areas that are generic to sport, to any athlete? Like, I'll never forget. I used to have a very good friend who was a world-class soccer player. He played in the Olympics, was in the Guinness Book of Records, scoring the fastest ever goal in a World Cup against Brazil for Denmark. And I remember giving this guy a tennis lesson. He asked me for a tennis lesson. The guy was 36, 38, fit as a fiddle. I taught him a kick serve in under 3 minutes. He understood the concepts of what's supposed to happen, the spin, the trajectory, the flight. So all of those things, how can they really help in other sports? Those internal growth, internal developments, not just tangible, hitting a tennis ball, and that looks really good.
Right. Of course, when you learn to learn motor movement patterns from a young age, you develop the habit of how to create those connections, you create the map of your body and your brain, and you are able to understand how your body functions. Your kinesthetic skill is very high if you start from a young age understanding how to create those patterns. Now, of course, I'm sure your friend from a very young age was already learning continuously motor patterns. So he has this skill of, adding one more connection in my brain. So that's why from a very young age, adding inputs, daily inputs, every single day, having physical inputs, creating new motor connections, it's very important because they will translate to any motor connection. You understand, you learn how to learn, basically. And this is a key part. Being good at one sport is not how you start. It is how much you learn. So you have to learn, and learn to learn. The earlier you start, the more you understand your body, the better map you have of your body, and you can create this new connection. So that's why these guys, they excel. They can learn new patterns much easily.
Yeah, it's really good feedback. I think that neural plasticity that you're talking about, that adaptability that comes from playing other sports, it comes across in many ways. One is, like I said, motor coordination, motor skill. But another way is learning modes of sport. And what I mean by that is, again, personal story. My son had no concept of defense until he played basketball. And then he learned that you better know how to defend, right? And that translated very nicely. It hasn't actuated, but it opened the idea, hey, defense is a critical part of the game. So I think that's also something that can come from early game-based development. I want to talk, some may not know what I mean by game-based development. What I mean is that we don't go out there and toss balls at kids and just keep telling them to hit balls, because there's no purpose to that. Yes, there is. Make contact, get it over. But as soon as they can do that, we want to immediately apply the concept of what they're doing to a game. Kids connect with games. Kids, we all know that. That's why kids are on their iPhones all day playing different games. Games are what keeps them in the sport. What do we do at Centercourt, Cinto, at the red edge, orange edge, green edge, the roguey levels to keep kids engaged, not only learning, having fun, but in the game-based methodology? How do we handle that in our programs and in summer camps?
Right. So for Centercourt, let me add one thing to what you were saying first. You said how your kid, your own child was really impacted by his tennis got better just because he understood some concepts from watching from another sport. And it's true that sometimes one sport is like a box. If you only see from inside the box, that's what you see. You see inside the box. But another sport can give you the perspective of some cross elements, like you think, especially the game-based elements. You see them from outside the box, and then you have a different perspective. Now, continuing with that, at Centercourt, the game-based approach, it is a fundamental part of our methodology. We do not conceive any program in our in all our categories, from red ball to yellow ball, that does not prioritize game understanding and tactics and mastering, not how to hit the ball, but how to play the game. Hitting the ball is important, but understanding the game, it is the base of our methodology. So all our programs at any age, from red to yellow, they are developed with the purpose of playing the game from the beginning, starting with serve, serve and return, throwing and catching, send and receiving. From the first session, we want the kids to understand that tennis is a game. It is not an exercise. And if we want to produce players that excel at playing tennis, we need to have them understanding that tennis is a game from day one. So all our lessons, game-based approach. We have games every single session. There's not a session that does not go without elements of thinking how to play, not just how to hit.
And Cinto, what's your experience with kids transitioning to the full court from the red ball court, which is 36 feet, 36 to 60 to 78? How often do they have to play? Like, what's the smoothest way for kids to transition, without doing it too quickly?
Let me say one thing about transitioning from red to orange, or orange to green, or green to yellow. The most common question I have from parents is, "Hey, Cinto, my kid can hit a yellow ball. Why cannot you cannot move him up to yellow ball?" And connecting with, we were talking with Conrad, my answer most of the times is yes, move him up. But most of the times is also, a lot of times is also because he still didn't understand how to play the game at red ball, for example. He's not playing the game. He's hitting balls. I want him, me and Todd, we want him to be able to understand the game first, master the game, join the matches on Fridays. That's the core of our methodology. Our methodology is not hitting balls. Our methodology is playing the game. So when I see that they understand, consistency, spaces, then is when I think maybe this kid is actually ready to move up. And orange ball, the same. Have you mastered the game of orange ball? Do you understand the space? Do you use the space? Then maybe you're ready to green ball, and same from green to yellow. That's how I base my how I see the kids. Did you master the game? Then we move up. Not can you hit a ball? A 4-year-old can hit a yellow ball sometimes, but he cannot play the game of yellow ball.
I'm going to jump in there, Cinto. That was extremely well said, because we're all dealing with the same topics all the time. And I'm going to throw to Danny next. Guys, what I want to touch on here is the tennis translating from the longest distance in the game is translating from a practice court to a match court. We all know that. It's the longest bridge possible. Kids do lesson, and some kids even private, and then go to a tournament and wonder why they can't win more than 1 or 2 rounds. Tennis is a completely open continuum skill-based sport. There are so many elements that come in a competitive environment that you cannot replicate in a practice court. We can get close to it, but we cannot perfectly replicate, such as playing practice sets. So I want to talk about very briefly the 4 elements, the 4 worlds that we encompass within our programs and definitely in our summer camps at performance level and certainly at our full-time academy. And they are that kids must take lessons, private lessons, to learn, to understand. It's also for mentoring. It's also for intervention. And of course, technical change, technical understanding. But it's also relationship building. So the private lesson world is one world, and that is critical. And I've never in my life ever seen a player only take private lessons and become an elite player. It's impossible. They'll have great skills. They'll know a lot about tennis, but they really cannot play matches and know how to get out of problems. First world, lessons. Second world, clinics, groups, camps, programs. What is the magic there? The magic is volume. The magic is seeing different opponents, seeing 2 types of balls, 4 types of balls, lefty, righty, two-hander, tall guy, short guy, fast guy, slow guy, heavy spin, no spin. All these elements come out of clinics. You can't get those. You really would have to play 10 tournaments to get the same effect of training a month because you're going to see so many different types of balls. Not only that, at Centercourt, we train on hard courts and on clay courts. It's another factor. So the second world is the clinic world or the group world, whatever you want to call it. The third world is the competitive world, okay? And that is tournaments, going to play team events, doubles, singles events, playing up, playing down, playing priority 1, priority 2, and playing practice sets. It is a fact that in the world's leading nations, competitive players play a minimum of 6 to 8 practice sets per week. Normally, 4 to 6 single sets and 2 double sets. There are many people out there that are, for whatever reason, think doubles is not important. You are committing a huge error. Doubles develops continental, teamwork, serve return, volleys, and returns, the most important parts. Not so much the rally, which is important, but not the most important when it comes to doubles. The fourth world, which is totally avoided by most, is what is called self-practice. No coach, no plan, just working it out. Failing, training, repping, trying, digging deep into your mind. What did coach tell me last week? And kind of recalling, memory, etc. So that's the fourth world. And, for that, you need to be a member of a club. You need to be able to have access to courts, which, again, we're lucky to have at Centercourt. So, again, I'll repeat the 4 worlds. Lessons, critical. Groups, clinics, critical. Competition plan, critical. And self-practice, unstructured practice, going out and just doing it. So we encourage that across the board. Now I'm going to throw to you, Danny, and ask you, what are your thoughts about that balance and how do we get it right for the right player?
Yeah, I think one of the things you kind of touched on is this element of problem solving. And there's this element of problem solving at every stage of development: red ball, orange ball, green ball, yellow. It's just that the problems are different and the solutions are different. They become more and more complicated. And the only way to truly master the sport and to perform at a high level when it matters, at the age that it matters, is to be engrossed in in the appropriate training environment and be exposed to these problems as often as you can. The other thing I would say is there's a big matter of motivation and how motivated a child is and an athlete is. And there are ways to externally motivate a kid. But I think it's very important for the athlete to discover sort of what motivates themselves, and how to get themselves going, and how to train with intention. And I think that when you consider, going back to the question that Cinto was addressing, when you consider somebody who can hit a yellow ball but should be training an orange ball, they're not ready to problem solve at that level yet. They don't have the tools, and it could be a little bit overwhelming. And then you do have a loss of motivation, right? After a while, you see that maybe I'm not good at this, and maybe it's not something that I should be doing, right? And at that point, oftentimes it's too late to take a step back. It's too late to take a kid who's playing at a higher level and then bring them back to a lower level, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense in the parents' eyes. So I think those two things are really, really important to keep in consideration. There is no sense in rushing the kids. I know that there's this prevailing kind of old school ideology about, well, I'll have my kid play with yellow ball from an early age and they're going to get used to it, and they're going to get used to the weight and used to the weight of the racket and the speed of the ball and everything like that. And I disagree with that. I think that it doesn't quite work that way. There's a lot of factors that come up that impede the progress when sort of rushed through. So I think the age appropriate development is extremely, extremely important. And we see that when kids are sort of playing catch up between 12 and 15 years old, when they were rushed too far ahead and don't have the good enough baseline skills or experience to perform at that level. And so they're sort of playing catch up and unfortunately falling behind. So, yeah.
Very, very interesting take. I love that. I'm going to give a quick story before I throw to Tim to talk to us about whether kids and what age kids should be doing strength training or not. This is another topic that comes up all the time. Very quickly, I would urge anyone to go online, look up Emma Raducanu playing 9 years or 8 years old in an orange ball LTA tournament, and have a look at the rally pattern structure at that age in an orange ball. She then went on to green ball for 2 full years and did not start competing or playing yellow ball till she was 10 and a half, 11 years old. However, a lot of her private lesson dead ball technical work was done with a yellow ball. So we need to understand there's a little bit of that involved. I'll never forget when Samir Banerjee won Wimbledon Juniors in 2021. He came back and spoke to the green ball edge kids, and I have a video of it where he's talking to them about the importance of that stage of development, that he played green ball tournaments until he was 11 years old. And the reason for that was his parents, who were very academic, understood the value of mastery. Mastery equals confidence, not just capability, which does not equal confidence. So being able to master the ball first, master the court. Samir talked about, he had time to be able to slice and approach, and he would serve and volley. He would do all these things at green ball that he couldn't do for 2 years at yellow ball. A year and a half at yellow ball was too fast. Just couldn't do it. We're talking about a kid who was an absolute, legend of tennis. Stanford now, ATP 400, 500, and really great player. But his message was, do not rush through that stage. The skills you get at that stage will be the skills that will help you win. Once you get into yellow ball, you'll have secondary game style. You'll be able to, know yourself a little better and have those continental grip shots, because you can do them properly with a green ball approach. And remember, one of the biggest challenges at green ball is court coverage, because they're going to cover, a whole court with a slower ball. So, yeah, very important topics. I think tennis is so intriguing. I heard an interview recently with a coach that, was I won't mention the coach, talking about the fact that rogi is just not important. Kids should go straight to yellow ball. I just don't agree with that at all. And I think we'd all agree, us that are dealing with parents, it's not a school situation, where kids all start the year and finish the year and then go in the next year together. This has got to consider developmental, physical factors, growth factors, the volume of tennis, all the rest. So interesting topics. Tim, final question for me for the day. Over to you about the importance of physical strength training. When should it start? And please defunk some of the myths.
Yeah. So, I mean, to just get right off the top rope, there is no age limit for when kids can start resistance training. There's no physical reason why they cannot do it. It does not stunt growth. It actually does the opposite. It stimulates growth. So most of the old wives' tales that people hear about strength training, and if your muscles get too big, you're not going to have range of motion, so you're not going to be a good athlete. It's all hogwash, as they say. But the way that we treat it at Centercourt and amongst all of my coaches and anyone who I've ever mentored over the years, we look at three separate things. We're going to look at an athlete's physical age, their mental age, and then their training age. So the physical age is obviously how physically old they are, from birth. But we can have a very, very different mental age for a 15-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. Let's say, those are two, generally speaking, very mentally different athletes. Girls obviously mature a lot quicker. And then on top of that, with their training age, it's basically how long since they've started doing supervised and or coach-related weight training or physical training. So all three of those factors go into when we start introducing particular exercises for any individual player. Like if I get an 8-year-old from, coming out of Red Ball from Coach Cinto and Coach Todd, I'm not going to throw a bar on their back and have them squat 100 pounds, right? That obviously doesn't make sense. But after, a series of time of them working with me, learning how to do a squat without weight, we're learning how to do a squat with counterweight, gradually increasing, adding some balance aspects to it. We can have a player who is 10, 11, 12 years old and be able to do like a weighted goblet squat or something like that completely safely. And not just safely, it will help them when they get to those growth spurts and their body starts to get really strained. The muscles and the ligaments and the tendons from resistance training, whether it be weights, whether it be bands, whatever we're using for that particular athlete, that is what helps reduce the injuries on those kids. And the easiest way that I can articulate it to people who don't really understand the physical science of like how the body progresses or like what weight training does is, specifically in tennis. We were just talking about this with some of the FTA kids last week. That's our full-time kids. Is when you serve, so for a right-handed player, they're going to jump, they're going to serve, they're going to land on their legs. They're going to land on their left leg generally. So if that is a 100-pound athlete, that athlete, every time they serve is going to land with about 150 pounds on that leg. So about 1.5 times their body weight. So every single time they do a serve, they land on that left leg, it's 150 pounds. So it's basically for a 100-pound athlete, that would be them lunging with 25-pound dumbbells in each hand. Obviously, let's say a 100-pound player is 12 years old. And if you saw a kid who's 12 years old holding 50 pounds of dumbbells and doing a lunge, you might be like, whoa, we might want to stop doing that. That's a little bit crazy. But that's the physical demand that a sport like tennis is going to play. And then you look at even something like just swinging a racket, right? So the average racket, somewhere around 300 milligrams, 250, depending on their age and whatnot, right? So every time they swing and hit a ball, you take those milligrams, convert them into pounds, times 1,000 swings, right? And that's how many pounds of force are going on that shoulder. So whether they're doing push-ups, whether we're doing dumbbell press, it is the resistance training and the weight training that trains specifically the ligaments and the tendons as well, to be able to take the amount of forces that go into any particular sport. So again, to bring it back to the beginning, there's no restrictions on when we introduce resistance training other than their physical age, the mental age of that athlete, and how long they've been working under supervision that we start to introduce particular exercises. And for at least for Centercourt, we have this all mapped out for our coaches from the very beginning, doing a body weight squat all the way up until, so we have some of our college boys leaving. And they want to start learning how to do like dumbbell snatching and dumbbell cleaning and barbell cleaning that they're going to have to do when they get to college, which is like the most complex stuff that you see in the Olympics. So it starts all the way from body weight motions all the way up through the most complex stuff that we do. And it's just a matter of working with that athlete, getting a sense of their mental age, getting a sense of where their training age is, and just their ability to complete an exercise safely. I mean, that's really at the end of the day, is making sure everything's done safely and controlled.
Thank you, Coach Tim. Guys, really appreciate everyone's time. I mean, as I started, we got a team, a panel here of absolute world-class leaders in their areas that are super passionate about what they're doing. Our mission at Centercourt is to raise the bar and to maintain quality and standards above all else, and to really open the door of opportunity for any of our athletes that come through, whether they're a red bowler with a passion or a yellow bowler that is a multi-sport athlete that wants to play in your high school team. We really believe that the game drives development, and we use the game, as Coach Cinto talked about, to maintain interest. It's so important that we talk about these topics. Our mission is to, again, help people to be educated, make the right decisions. And so I think Ari's going to put some information in the chat. Anyone regarding performance tennis, if you want to talk further, have a meeting, development, consult, anything like that, I'm available. Please contact me. Be happy to do that. We're also at the time now where we're starting to think about summer camps. We take a limited number of people at our performance summer camps. So it's very important you get organized early. All players are divided by UTR and by levels. And again, we're ready and open now to accept those. If you want more information, contact me. And for the summer camps for JDP, junior tennis, and general camps at Chatham that are not tennis related as well, you can contact Ari. Coach Cinto is available for any questioning. Anyone interested in further development at full-time level, Danny would love to see you. And Tim's always looking to do muscular screenings for kids that need some help and parents that need some help. So from us, the team here at the education side of Centercourt, thank you so much, everyone, for being there. Ari, I'll throw it back to you.
All right. Yeah. Again, thanks everybody for joining us, who joined today, and thanks everybody for from Danny, Tim, Cinto, Totsky, Conrad. I put Conrad's information in the chat. Of course, Conrad kind of gave a rundown of what we have going on, but for any program, junior tennis, we have spring programs. All of our programs are year round. Private lessons, small group training, after school programs, holiday camps, summer camps, just a little bit of everything. We try and offer the gamut. We have membership options for adults who play a lot, and even for juniors. We have juniors who can become a member and grab court time. So a little bit of everything. That's at our Chatham location. We actually have pickleball, padel. Yeah, we got it all. So reach out to us with questions anytime. Conrad, I'll give you his email is conrad@centercourtclub.com. His cell, call him or text him anytime. Later the better. 862-308-3029. And I'll give you my info. It's ari@centercourtclub.com. And my cell is 973-606-0304. Thanks to everybody. This was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, all.